stop doing cardio. I know that sounds strange coming from a doctor. I know that for years, maybe decades, you have been getting up before sunrise, lacing up your shoes, forcing yourself onto a treadmill or a stationary bike, sweating through 45 minutes of cardio, and still looking in the mirror at the same stubborn belly. I need you to hear something important. What is happening to your midsection is not a willpower failure. It is not something you did wrong. It is a hormonal process, a metabolic process. And once you understand what is actually driving it, you will have exactly the tool you need to change it. I have spent years studying how metabolism, movement, and hormones interact with human biology. And what I am about to share with you today is the story of a single daily habit, a habit that takes only 10 minutes, a habit that has been shown in published research to target the exact mechanism that causes visceral fat to build up around your organs. And if you stay with me until the very end of this video, I am going to walk you through the precise way to do this, because most people do it at the wrong time of day. And that timing mistake is the difference between real results and wasted effort. Let me start by explaining what visceral fat actually is, because most people confuse it with the fat they can pinch. The fat under your skin, the fat you can grab with your fingers, that is called subcutaneous fat. It is not harmless, but it is not the main problem. The fat that matters, the fat that drives disease risk, sits deep in your abdomen, wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. That is visceral fat. And unlike the fat under your skin, visceral fat behaves almost like an organ of its own. It is metabolically active. It releases inflammatory chemicals directly into your bloodstream. It disrupts how your body responds to insulin. This is why visceral fat is so strongly linked to type 2 diabetes, to heart disease, to fatty liver, even in people who do not look overweight from the outside. Here is what happens. As visceral fat builds up, under normal conditions, your body stores some fat around your organs as a kind of metabolic buffer. But when you are inactive for long stretches of the day, something changes. Your muscles, which are usually your body's biggest consumers of blood sugar and fat for fuel, go quiet. And when your muscles go quiet for hours at a time, your body has fewer places to send incoming fuel after a meal. So instead, more of it gets shuttled towards storage, and a disproportionate share of that lands as visceral fat. This is where a concept called NEAT becomes essential. Almost nobody talks about this. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It refers to all the energy your body burns through movement that is not formal exercise. Walking to the kitchen, standing at your desk, fidgeting, taking the stairs. Research led by Dr. James Levine at the Mayo Clinic found that NEAT can vary by several hundred calories a day between two people of similar size, simply based on how much they move outside of structured workouts. His research also found something striking. People who sit for most of their day, even if they exercise for an hour, still show metabolic patterns closer to a sedentary person than an active one. This is sometimes called the active couch potato pattern. You can do your hour of cardio and still spend 23 hours being metabolically still. This is why cardio alone often fails to shrink visceral fat the way people expect. An hour in the morning does not undo 8 hours of sitting completely still afterward. Your muscles need to be recruited throughout the day, not just in one concentrated session. Now, here is the specific habit I promised you. And this is the part I want you to remember. A short walk, just 10 minutes, taken after a meal, has a measurable effect on blood sugar and fat storage that a longer walk at a random time of day does not replicate as efficiently. Research published by scientists at the University of Otago and later reviewed in a well-known meta-analysis in the journal Sports Medicine found that walking after meals, even briefly, blunted the post-meal rise in blood glucose more effectively than walking at other times of day, or a single longer walk taken once daily. When blood glucose rises less sharply after a meal, your body needs to release less insulin. And less circulating insulin means less of a hormonal signal, pushing your body toward fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. Let me explain the mechanism simply, because understanding it is what separates a real strategy from a guess. When you eat a meal, especially one containing carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin. And insulin's job is to move that glucose out of your blood and into your cells. Muscle is one of the most important destinations for that glucose, but only if the muscle is being actively used. When you walk shortly after eating, your leg muscles contract again and again. And contracting muscle pulls glucose out of your bloodstream through a pathway that does not even require much insulin. This means less glucose lingers in your blood. Less insulin needs to be released, and your body is nudged away from a fat storage state and toward a fat use state. There is a second pathway worth understanding, and it involves cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated for long stretches of the day. And elevated cortisol has been linked in research, including a well-known study out of Yale, to increased fat storage specifically in the abdominal region, more so than in other parts of the body. Movement, even gentle movement like walking, has been shown in multiple studies to lower circulating cortisol. So the 10-minute walk is doing two things at the same time. It is managing the glucose and insulin response from your meal, and it is helping regulate the stress hormone that specifically favors visceral fat storage. There is a third factor, and I think it is underappreciated: muscle. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive to maintain, which means the more muscle you carry, the more energy your body burns, even at rest. Research on resistance training, including a supervised trial known as STRIDE, conducted at Duke University, compared different exercise approaches and found that resistance training produced meaningful reductions in visceral fat, in some comparisons performing comparably to or even better than aerobic exercise alone for this specific fat depot. This does not mean cardio is useless. It means that muscle-building movement deserves a place in your routine. Because muscle is metabolically active tissue, that helps your body manage blood sugar all day long, not just during a workout. So here is the complete, honest picture. There is no single 10-minute habit that replaces every other health behavior. But if I had to choose the single highest leverage habit for a person dealing with visceral fat, it would be this: walk for 10 minutes after your largest meal of the day. Let me give you the exact protocol. Within 30 minutes of finishing a meal, ideally the meal with the most carbohydrates or the largest portion, go for a walk. It does not need to be fast. A comfortable, sustainable pace is enough. The goal is muscle contraction, not exhaustion. 10 minutes is the minimum research-supported duration to see a measurable effect on the post-meal blood sugar curve. Though 15 to 20 minutes shows even stronger effects in some of the studies. If you can only do this after one meal a day, choose dinner, since evening is when many people are least active afterward, and the glucose response has the longest window to sit unmanaged before sleep. While you walk, breathe normally through your nose if you can. This is not about intensity. You should be able to hold a conversation the entire time. If you are gasping, you have overshot the point of this particular habit. Now, layer in the second piece. 2 to 3 times per week, add a short session of resistance movement. This does not require a gym membership. Bodyweight squats, push-ups against a counter, resistance bands, or light dumbbells at home. 15 to 20 minutes is enough. The goal here is not to become a bodybuilder. The goal is to give your body more metabolically active tissue. Tissue that consumes blood sugar throughout the day, every day, not just during exercise. Let me be honest about the timeline, because I always will be with you. Visceral fat did not build up overnight, and it will not disappear overnight either. Here is a realistic picture. In the first 2 to 3 weeks, you will likely notice improved energy after meals. Less of that sluggish, bloated feeling that often follows a heavy dinner. This is an early sign that your post-meal glucose spikes are being blunted. By around 6 to 8 weeks of consistent post-meal walking combined with regular resistance movement, many people notice their waistband fitting more loosely, even before the number on the scale changes dramatically. Because visceral fat loss often shows up first as a reduction in waist circumference rather than total body weight. By 3 to 4 months of consistency, this is typically when more substantial changes in waist measurement become apparent. Consistency matters more than intensity here. A 10-minute walk every single day after dinner will outperform an intense 60-minute workout done sporadically once a week. Because the mechanism we are targeting, the post-meal glucose and insulin response, happens every single time you eat, not just on the days you exercise. I want to address something directly because I think it matters. This habit does not replace a reasonable overall diet, adequate sleep, or medical care for existing conditions like diabetes or heart disease. If you have a diagnosed condition, please continue working with your physician. Treat this walking habit as something you layer on top of your existing care, not a replacement for it. Movement is powerful, but it is not a substitute for medical treatment when medical treatment is needed. I also want to say something about self-image before we close. Visceral fat is not a mark of laziness or moral failure. For many people, it is the predictable result of jobs that keep us seated for 8 or 10 hours a day, in a built environment that was never designed around movement. If you have been blaming yourself for something that is largely a product of modern sedentary life, colliding with ancient human biology, I want you to let that go. Blame is not useful here. Understanding the mechanism is useful, because once you understand it, you can work with your biology instead of fighting it. So here is what I am asking you to do. Tonight, after your dinner, put on your shoes and walk for 10 minutes. Nothing more complicated than that. Tomorrow, do it again. And 2 or 3 times this week, add 15 minutes of simple resistance movement, even if it is just body weight exercises in your living room. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me when you plan to take your first post-meal walk. And come back in 8 weeks and tell me what changed, whether it was your waistband, your energy, or the number on the scale. I read every comment on this channel. Your experience might be exactly what convinces someone else to put their shoes on tonight instead of scrolling past this video. And before you go, think of one person in your life who has tried every cardio routine and still feels stuck. Share this with them. It costs nothing but 10 minutes a day. And for the right person at the right time, it might be the shift that finally makes sense of everything they have been struggling with. Take care of your body. It has carried you this far. And with the right information and the right 10 minutes, it can carry you so much further.